Senator Bob Day. Are you there, sir?
Yes, good morning, Jeremy.
How are you?
Oh, I'm well, thanks. It's fascinating listening to Ian Plimer there. I don't know whether Ian or yourself realise, but it's 50 years this week since Western Mining actually first discovered the uranium and copper and the Olympic Dam mine. In fact, it nearly didn't happen. Just a little interesting aside, just to add to what Ian was saying. It was almost unheard of, but Western Mining was so convinced that there was an ore body there that they kept drilling. It was on the 9th hole that they drilled that they actually discovered the uranium, gold, copper, and so on. So it nearly didn't happen for South Australia, and of course, Labor at the time were very, very opposed to it, and it was only thanks to, as you well recall, the great Norm Foster,
Stormy
who crossed
Normie.
the floor. Yes, yeah, he crossed the floor and joined and voted with the Tonkin government in 1982 that actually made it happen. So, I mean, Olympic Dam has been a phenomenal success story for South Australia.
What has it been worth? Do you know?
Hundreds of billions of dollars, both nationally and state. Not to mention, obviously, Roxby Downs is the main town that has been built there to support Olympic Dam, but it just keeps getting bigger. And as Western Mining, WMC, then got taken over by BHP, and now it's just one of the great success stories of the world.
And Bob, Les Alicus here. Good morning to you.
Oh, hi, good morning, Les.
Good to talk to you again.
Likewise.
We've been spending the morning talking about how do we push back against government or early childhood learning philosophies and various trends, woke trends. And I noticed talking about mining, BHP and Santos are now more prevalent and upfront in the press, advertising the need for copper, the need for gas. And I think this is the way we have to push back, Bob, that the public and corporations who aren't woke need to start to peddle their wares and talk about the virtues of why we should have change and why we should, for example, follow Peter Dutton's, at least have a sensible debate about it, because we're getting ourselves into all sorts of strife now with these, I think, anti-progressional tactics that various governments are putting into place.
Yes, it's good marketing by BHP. They kind of don't mention some of the other mining commodities that they extract, but they are promoting the idea that copper is essential for renewables and for all the other modern technologies that we enjoy, and we need copper, and copper's such an important part of Olympic Dam. But not only that, but this nuclear also opens up the opportunity, like you was talking to Ian about nuclear waste. Now, there at the moment, South Korea and Japan and India and Pakistan and a number of other countries are all now wanting to take on board nuclear power. Not only that, it's not just the economic benefits to South Australia. I mean, I think we talked last time that the state budget was $28 billion. We could eliminate the state budget. In fact, all those taxes and stamp duties and payroll taxes and all the charges and license fees and all them where that $28 billion comes from out of South Australians' pockets could almost be eliminated by becoming this great safe repository of nuclear spent fuel. And not only the economic benefits, but we could invite the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, to set up an office in Adelaide, invite the world's best and brightest on the best ways of storing nuclear fuel and these sorts of things. And all these countries then, South Korea and Japan, all our friends, would all then have a profound interest in our security, and imagine the esteem that we would be held in. We would be a significant security partner for so many of these friendly Asian countries. I mean, India is a phenomenal country and just getting bigger and bigger and better. You can imagine the kind of partnerships that we could forge and earn enough, a bit like you mentioned Saudi Arabia. You don't pay any tax if you live in Saudi Arabia. There's no income tax or anything like that.
Petrol, I think, petrol's 3 cents a litre or some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah. So we could certainly, it would be a phenomenal. I just think, though, that Peter Dutton's might be going about it. I mean, like Ian says, it's very brave and all that sort of stuff. But I remember Peter Dutton, when I was a senator, he was in charge of the health portfolio. He was the health minister, and he wanted to introduce the co-payment, $7 co-payment. Mm-hmm. And I said to him at the time, I said, look, Peter, there's a right way and a wrong way to start charging for something that was previously free. Well, I said, you remember when you used to get, if you wanted sauce with your pie or pasty, you got it for free. They just gave it a bit of a squirt. But then they wanted to start charging, so they made these little sachets and charge you 1 or 2 cents, virtually next to nothing. But of course, there's a right way to start charging for something. So I said, if you're going to start charging for a co-payment, make it $1 so that people don't even notice it. And then you can creep it up over the years. But he just kind of went along with his $7 and it never got anywhere. So I think it's a great idea. And I think it's the right objective, but it's kind of 7 nuclear power stations all announced at once. I thought, and I mean, the Labor Party's response is just plain silly. All these 3-headed fish and, all these silly ads that they're doing about.
Bob, you're correct, because for a federal government who has embraced the AUKUS deal, nuclear submarines, to actually then condemn nuclear baseload power, it's just a nonsense. An argumentative nonsense, and if the opposition can't pull that apart, they're not worthwhile being an operation to be in government. But
they're inconsistent.
540 nuclear power reactors are on the planet Earth. 43 countries use them and have been using them successfully. And look, 1.5% have melted down, and of course, just like motor cars or anything, there's always going to be accidents. We can't prevent that. That's just the nature of the beast.
Well, not with nuclear power stations. They're not accidents. There hasn't been one for, an actual accident for, decades and decades and decades. And the modern ones don't have any accidents.
Well, look, you've got natural phenomena like Fukushima wasn't necessarily an accident. It was the fate of nature. Maybe it was design problem because they didn't, the elevation.
They put it in the wrong location. Next to the right
elevation.
Ocean,
if they put it higher up, it would have been safe. But look, to demonise nuclear and the way it's pedestrian in my view, the way the government
and childish
ministers are criticising Dutton. I mean, Dutton's got so much opportunity to. Debunk what they're saying, statistically and otherwise. And the fact is, people who argue that there's not enough detail in the plan, well, hang on, we're just starting the ball rolling, and from small acorns do big trees grow. This is early doors, and if Dutton keeps adding to it, my feeling, Bob, is that the public now has an appetite to at least debate the subject. Whereas 12 months ago or longer, the public just wasn't interested. They just said, look, we'll go along with the nuclear bandwagon. But now that energy prices are biting in hard and the cost of living is biting in hard, the public is saying, hang on, we might need to look at an alternative. And one of the questions I would have liked to have asked Ian Plimer, I mean, we human beings survive on a diet that has various components. We don't eat one thing. So it's like our energy. We don't have to have our energy coming from one source. It can be some renewable, some natural, some nuclear. There's a host of different ways we can gain our energy, and Mother Nature, and if you believe in a maker, has provided us the raw materials to use, and this is how the human race has progressed, Bob. We've actually used our ingenuity, taken substances from the earth, and we've progressed. I mean, as Ian Plimer has said many times on the show, People now have got heating in their homes. People can cook inside their homes. People are now getting educated. The world is becoming a more involved technological engineering
better place.
Better place.
Better
So,
place.
And medicine is flowing along with that because
absolutely.
we have energy.
They've been selling us the idea of these nuclear submarines and the benefits of them and all that for the last few years, and then all of a sudden they're now saying, oh no, nuclear, you're going to end up with three-headed fish and all sorts of distortions. And you thought, hang on a minute, make your mind up. Is nuclear good or is it bad? So I think their inconsistencies now in their messaging could backfire on them for sure.
Surely the one of the best angles would have to be nuclear medicine. After all, people have benefited, and even if the individual hasn't benefited, we all know somebody who has.
Oh, the X-ray, yeah, of course, yeah.
Look,
MRIs and X-rays it's all.
Yeah.
No, wonderful. Look, and the other thing I was fascinated to listen to this morning, talking about the Ten Commandments and that in America where
Louisiana,
they ordered to be reinstated, that the list of the Ten Commandments. It reminded me of a story of an RSL guy told me here in Adelaide. He said one day a local primary school teacher came in with one of those honour boards that they had in the school with all the names of the diggers that had been, and came to the RSL and said, look, this was up in our school. We don't need it anymore. And he said, what do you mean you don't need it? He said, well, look, this is not the sort of thing that we want to be, talking to our students about. So, look, we want to give it back. And he said, look, the very reason that you can walk in here and give that back is the very reason that those people, those men died in that war for your freedom. And you sort of think, is the world a better place by since the Ten Commandments up on the wall was banned up in the primary school? You sort of think, well, look at the list of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not steal. Don't covet your neighbour's thing. Don't kill. Don't bear false witness. What's wrong with that?
It's all basic, isn't it?
Is the world a better place since they were banned or not?
And essentially, Bob, our law system of justice is built up on foundation stones like the Ten Commandments.
Well, society is kind of the whole basis of society's protection. Society's protection is based around three levels of protection. The very first one is a person's own conscience. Don't do the wrong thing. All the Ten Commandments stuff are all personal morality things. The next level of protection for society is the family, so that if one of the family members steps out of line, family's there to drag them back in and say, hey, stop doing that and get back in, get back in check. And, of course, the third line of protection is the police. Now, you don't want the police following everybody around, but if the first line of protection, if a person's conscience fails and then the family breakdown fails, your societies, you can't have it as a police state. So I think the reintroduction of the Ten Commandments, it's not compulsory, they're not forcing everybody. They don't give a daily checklist of who's complied and who hasn't, but I think it's a really important first line of society's, good order to have it there.
But it's a strange thing that it makes the international headlines that the governor of the state has decided that this is what's going to happen. When really it should have made the headlines when somebody decided to take the Ten Commandments out of the classrooms.
I think if those vandals who vandalised Stonehenge, I don't know whether you've ever been to Stonehenge, Jeremy.
No, I haven't.
It is absolutely, it's eerily beautiful, and it's just the most stunning, calm, quite breathtaking place. It's really, really interesting. And to watch those vandals spray painting them with orange paint, there again, a breakdown in the first level of society. Those people didn't have any sense of respect for other people's and the rest of society. So, they're not unrelated. I think they're connected when we take away those kinds of things.
But why do they? What's the connection between that demonstration and their cause, which I think is what is it? Just say no to oil,
just stop oil. Yeah,
just stop oil. Well, I can't see the connection. I think it's just basic anarchists, people who want to create chaos.
And Bob, look, the three of us are old enough to realise and have gone through the Vietnam War era, and my belief is that was a counterculture era, the 60s and the 70s, and my greater feeling is we're going through that. It's a revision of the counterculture where people want to be argumentative, and I'm not saying all people, but the younger generation now trained to be, as Jeremy's putting it, anarchical in their behaviour. They want to protest. They don't necessarily understand the Middle East conflict. They don't necessarily understand history. They don't necessarily understand even why they're doing things, but they're part of a movement who just want to criticise and break down.
Or break down society, yeah.
Well, look, you see that across the board. I remember the story of a guy. He walked into a tattoo parlour and he was having a look around and he saw all these hundreds and hundreds of different design patterns that the tattooist had up on his wall, and fascinating, flags and animals and sayings. And he spotted one behind the tattooist on the wall, and it said, "Born to lose." And he pointed and he says,
he wanted that one?
He said, "That one there." And he goes, no, he obviously didn't want it. He said, "Does anyone ever get that one tattooed onto their body?" And the tattooist said, "Oh, yeah, all the time." And he said, "Why would anyone tattoo 'Born to Lose' on their body?" And he said, it's tattooed on their mind long before I tattoo it on their body.
Good God. I don't know, Senator, whether you've seen this Bureau of Crime Statistics report. Youth crime, they say, is out of control.
Yep.
It's jumped alarmingly. Crime committed by children, and we're talking about the age group of 10 to 17, 20% up in 1 year, 136 youth gang members arrested more than 30 times. And this one, which is sort of indicative of a breakdown in society, I think. This boy, I can't name him because the courts can't name him either. He's 14 years old. He has been before the courts 388 times. And again, yesterday he was granted bail by the magistrate.
You know what? When I was in the building industry, I used to see these stories all the time. And I'd had mothers coming to see me and in tears saying, just like that story there, my son, he's 16 years old, he's causing trouble at school, he's causing trouble at home, he keeps getting in trouble with the police. I said, can you give him a job? So we give him a job on a building site, and we get him working. And I'll tell you, Jeremy, by Friday night, they're too buggered to be, hooning around, lighting fires to brush fences and spray painting. There's this breakdown that young people need an outlet for their whatever it is, anger or their energy or whatever. And if you could get them working, there's no point. I mean, there's so many tradespeople who left school at 14. All right, they weren't particularly, academically gifted, but they all knew how to add up. Their reading and writing wasn't the best. I used to see some of their invoices and some of the writing they did. It wasn't good, but they could all add up pretty well. They were pretty good like that. But they were all really good citizens. They all had a couple of properties. They send their kids to private schools and they coach football or down at the Surf Lifesaving Club or whatever it was. And yet they left school at 14, got working in the building industry, did really well. And I think keeping these lads in school or trying to, when they got rid of the technical colleges and so on and say, oh, no, we want to get 80% of all students to go on to university and all this sort of thing. I think a lot of the problems with the juvenile delinquency, and it stems from the lack of recognition about, well, what's the best prevention to stop them from getting in that situation, because really hard. Once they've had 388, did you say, Jeremy?
Yeah, 388 offences, yeah.
Offences. I mean, where do you go to from there? That's a really, really tough lad to deal with once they get to that stage. But, it's so much harder now to take on lads and apprentices. They've made it so hard to take on young people in the building industry now that I don't know what the answer is. Yeah. A complete change of attitude is needed, I think.
But it goes to that other story about what we're doing in the schools, what we're teaching, the emphasis that we are putting on 3-year-olds learning to recite the Welcome to Country, but nothing that they can go out there and use as a building block for the rest of their education.
Yeah, there's no 10 Commandments on the wall. There's no RSL honour board up on the wall to teach them all those sorts of things.
Well,
it's all,
somehow we've got to put the world back on its axis or back on its feet or something.
Well, being from the building industry, Bob, I mean, the vandalism and theft from building sites. I mean, I recall building sites in my younger years, and that's a long time ago now. There were never cyclone fences around building sites. There were never security cameras. Now almost every building site has cyclone fencing, security cameras to prevent theft and vandalism. I mean, it's rife, and you would know in your industry when you were there, those levels were extremely high. And then, of course, the judicial system, particularly nowadays, are offering non-custodial sentences. And I'm not suggesting that every crime should have a punitive outcome, but there's a general trend in society that people are allowed to get away with it. And, of course, if you're allowed to get away with it, you keep on reoffending, particularly if it gives you some sort of buzz. And this is what we need to correct, I guess, in our society.
You need for it to be corrected, you need people to understand how the world really works.
And look, if people understood from the get-go what the 10 Commandments represent and what they mean, and they had a good foundational understanding of that and a good spirit of doing the right thing for themselves and society, would all be in a better place. But, the early education people want to sideline all those wonderful principles and get away with religion, move away from family, and let's do the social engineering crap.
Well, I remember Bert Kelly used to say that when he was in the Parliament, in the party room, if some MP came up with some policy idea and said, look, why don't we do this or this, that invariably there was another MP in the party room who could put up their hand and say, hang on a minute, I used to work in that industry. If you go down this path, this is what will happen. This will happen, and then that will happen. These days, no one in the party room has ever had a proper job. Mm-hmm. They go to university, get a job working for a politician, and then become a politician. So whenever any harebrained scheme is floated, there's no one there that's had any experience in any industries, whether it's farming or manufacturing or building or driving a bus or even school, teaching or something.
Real life experience of some kind.
Real life experience, absolutely.
And that's why they have to employ these highly paid consultants to give them the information they need, because they can't make their own judgment call, and that's the problem. If ministers can't make a judgment call and they let the bureaucratic system run the show, well, the bureaucrat, when I was a public servant, I worked for the Highways Department as my first stage of my career. And I remember, I think just about every government department, the head of every department was an engineer. It didn't matter whether it was a social policy department or an infrastructure policy or water or whatever it was. They're all headed by engineers because that's the way they thought. So that if a minister went to his department head with some harebrained scheme about something, the department head would say, no, Minister, that's it won't work for this reason, or we'll need to do this, or we'll need to do that. So, but of course, when these I think it was particularly Don Dunstan came in, didn't like that the departmental heads were pushing back against some of their progressive
policy ideas. So instead of changing tack and listening more to their department head engineers, they got rid of them and put in place department heads who would just go along, yes, Minister, and do whatever the Minister wanted. Then, which is how you end up with, roads, the Southern Expressways that goes one way in the morning and then one way in the afternoon. And, the department head, will say, well, look, for us to do that, Minister, and I think it was Di Laidlaw or somebody, it would cost us more to monitor the traffic, set up a control room with electronic monitoring, and it would cost us more to monitor the traffic and then stop it in the middle of the day and then turn it all around the other way than it would to build 2 lanes going the other way. But no, it didn't matter. Seems what ministers want to do, obscure to common sense, but that's what they want to do. But again, don't get us started on that topic.
No, it's great to talk to you. You have a good week.
Likewise.
Thank you, Senator.
No worries. Look forward to talking to you again.
I'll look forward to it too. Man of great common sense, ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bob Day.